Thank you for inviting me to this prestigious gathering at NATO's Parliamentary Assembly. There is a new Middle East alliance system taking root around Syria and Iraq. On one side, there is Saudi Arabia, Jordan, there is Egypt and the UAE, and feel threatened by the rise of Islamists who have targeted the Muslim Brotherhood. On the other side, there is Qatar, who, despite targeting ISIS, still has a vision to establish Islamist regimes across the region. To this end, Qatar has supported Islamists in Syria and Sudan. Qatar has supported the Muslim Brotherhood and is funding Islamists in Libya, such as Ansar al-Sharia. Matthew Hedges has expressed that Ansar al-Sharia has traversed from Libya to Iraq and often stages public burnings of effigies of Gulf leaders. Turkey has joined the alliance against ISIS, but had purchased ISIS oil along with Turkey's association with the al-Nusra Front that has been affiliated with ISIS. The previous phase of what was naively termed the Arab Spring was proxy Sunni Shia warfare, which has evolved now into an intra-Sunni conflict on who is going to be the legitimate representative of Sunni Islam. In June 2014, ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi announced the establishment of the Islamic Caliphate in Iraq and Syria, declaring it the true home of Islam, and encouraged Muslims to immigrate to it. Who will restore the Caliphate? The road to this runs through Saudi Arabia, that serves as the custodian of the two mosques in Mecca and Medina. ISIS feels it has a religious duty to target the Saudi monarchy. ISIS has launched a campaign against Saudi Arabia that is termed the Qadimun, or We Are Coming, to take over the country. Yet piousness is always buttressed by greed. The more pious and fundamental, the more greedy. Saudi Arabia's enormous oil fields and monetary wealth have always been coveted by Al-Qaeda, as they now are by ISIS. Bahrain is also vulnerable to being targeted by ISIS. There has been ISIS graffiti near the airport. Bahrain would be a natural target, as it's where the Fifth Fleet is based and hosts clubs where US sailors frequent. Theodore Karasik has expressed that Bahrain has clerics that are part of ISIS's command structure and have a following in Iraq. They seek to foster sectarianism and have an apocalyptic agenda. ISIS have plans to expand in Kuwait, which it considers as part of Iraq, as well as northern Saudi Arabia. In Kuwait, Sunni clerics and tribal leaders give money to ISIS. Individuals from pious Kuwaiti merchant families have funded ISIS. There's a network of business ties following tribal roots in Kuwait, Turkey, Jordan, Iraq and Syria. Kuwaiti society is divided, and there's a risk of ISIS using the Sunni Shia fissures there to rear its head. In northern Saudi Arabia, there are tribes that are linked to tribes in Iraq that admire ISIS. The tribal belt between Jordan, Iraq and Saudi Arabia are interconnected with families and businesses for ISIS to exploit. Saudi Arabia and the UAE fear their youths roused by the actions and rhetoric of groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS that are anti-monarchist. There is a fear that numerous Saudis believe that ISIS's ideology is consistent with values of Islam and the Sharia. Saudi Arabia fears its citizens joining ISIS and returning to establish cells in the kingdom. They could become networked with existing opposition groups or establish subversive groups in the Arabian Peninsula. This is accompanied by increased risk that senior figures and oil facilities could be attacked. The Eid festival that has been announced is relatively short, as states such as the UAE are currently concerned about the presence of lots of civilians in densely populated areas. To this end, they are curbing their tourism. Saudi Arabia has also limited the number of people attending the Hajj due to fears regarding Ebola. The threat of Islamism has caused Gulf leaders to come together. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have flown sorties over Iraq and Syria, proving to the West that they are taking a front seat. France and Australia are also flying out of the UAE on target runs. The more Gulf states feel threatened, the more you will see sophisticated weapons, defense systems, and border security technologies purchased by these states. Iran has been the beneficiary of the intra-Sunni conflict and has been using this as leverage against the US in nuclear talks. Ultimately, the Obama administration will allow Iran to go nuclear. In the quest to defeat ISIS in Syria and Iraq, Secretary Kerry expressed there is a role for nearly every country in the world, including Iran. You can just imagine the delight of GCC states at the likelihood of the US's private coalition that includes Iran. In response, Iran confidently announced that it's undertaking the construction of 2 new nuclear power plants this year in the city of Bushehr, where one contested plant is already up and running. At the same time, the US has explored softening its demands that Iran dismantle its nuclear program. The US is currently negotiating with Iran about allowing it to maintain half its centrifuges, but reduce its ability to feed uranium gas into the machines. Gulf states must develop a coherent set of values and strategic priorities for the sake of their security. On one hand, Saudi Arabia fears that a disintegrating Iraq could shelter Islamists that proceed to target the kingdom. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia fears the fight against ISIS could hasten the US-Iran detente. It was in Saudi Arabia's interests when ISIS operated against the al-Maliki government, and Iran was focused on countering it. Now Iran has increased its involvement in Iraq, leading to likely cooperation with the US, and ISIS is on Saudi Arabia's doorstep. Saudi Arabia must choose between the Westphalian model, which has led it to underpin the security architecture of the region on behalf of the West, and the sponsorship of transnational Islamism, which undermines the Westphalian model. This undermines Saudi Arabia's security itself, as the 2003 Riyadh compound attacks showed. Such a choice will determine the effectiveness of its counter-terrorism and counter-radicalization efforts against ISIS. Such a choice will determine the nature of the GCC. Will it be used to insulate itself against a looming Iranian threat? Will it be used to clamp down upon the internal dissent potentially fueled by Iran or sub-state actors like ISIS? I believe that at this moment in history, with the advent of religiously motivated barbarism and vacuums of governance engulfing the region, the US should resist democracy promotion and welcome centralized-driven liberalization. This has been epitomized by Dubai's visionary leader, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who has emphasized the limitations of military action alone against ISIS, stressing the need for sustainable infrastructure development to counter radicalization by offering people prospects. I believe strategists should challenge themselves, think outside the box, and play with scenarios however far-fetched they may appear. What happens if the US is not perceived to stay the course by Gulf states who are already suspicious of the Obama administration? By staying the course, I mean they fail to effectively roll back ISIS using air power alone. They fail to commit ground troops, are overly reliant upon leading from behind, and will only demonstrate resolve if their other allies do so as well. Had the US heeded Saudi Arabia's warnings 3 years ago of the need to remove the Assad regime and bolster rebels, ISIS would not have had the strength they have today. Thus, the US created its own conundrum it faces today. That by targeting ISIS, it emboldens other Islamist groups and the Assad regime. What happens if the US's incoherent approach of tangoing with Iran and GCC states simultaneously raises the ire of its Gulf allies? What happens if the US prefers state actors, however rogue, to sub-state terrorists, and as such shifts its policy towards recognizing the Assad regime against ISIS and the rebels that are also Islamists? This would be coupled with unravelling of Iranian sanctions, bolstering of Iran's presence in Iraq, increasing Hezbollah's power in Syria and Lebanon, and allowing Iran to reach the nuclear status. Already there are voices proclaiming that Iran bordering Iraq needs to have a central role in countering ISIS. Is it possible to enhance Iran's position without emboldening the Assad regime? This would be a policy shift of 180 degrees. These scenarios could place GCC states in a position of having to prioritize their security threats. They may extend an olive branch to Iran and race to go nuclear themselves. For the sake of survival, they may extend an olive branch to ISIS by co-opting them and even becoming a financial sponsor of radical Sunnis and failed Sunni areas, while still underpinning the security architecture for the US in the region. Energy, shipping and insurance prices would spike. The US must lead the effort against ISIS, and there is no way to do so on the cheap, relying on air power regional proxies. The global threats emanating from the vacuum of governance in areas such as Iraq and Syria are enormous. There are 5 measures that need to be embraced to guarantee the sense of security among GCC states and the effective rollback of ISIS. Number 1. Increased military expenditure, and boots must be on the ground. Number 2. An infrastructural development that offers prospects for citizens. 3. Counter-terrorism and counter-radicalization. This was conducted extensively during the Cold War, and was a missing component from the failed winning hearts and minds endeavour. Liberal values should be promoted within Gulf states and tied to security provisions the US offers. 4. Coercive military tactics against ISIS and their ideological compatriots must be adopted. 5. Coherently prioritise threats such as Iran, Syria, and sub-state actors such as ISIS, even grouping them together. Failure to do so will export not only Iraq and Syria's Islamist threats from the Gulf to the West, but will export Iran's threats too. Saudi King Abdullah declared, "I am certain that after a month, ISIS, will reach Europe, and after another month, America." Other than the timeline, I am most fearful that his prediction is a prescient one. Thank you very much.